The following video features excerpts taken from 5 recorded live lessons on drawing a realistic light bulb with graphite pencils. To learn more about our membership program, where you can access this complete live lesson series as well as the other recorded live lessons, video courses, ebooks, lesson plans, and much, much more, visit thevirtualinstructor.com/members. I'm going to be working with an H pencil, an HB pencil, and a 4B pencil. And I also have this is a blending tortilla, but you can use a blending stomp as well. So anyway, this is our photo reference, and it is designed to be a challenge here for you. This is a great exercise for developing a lot of control with how you develop values. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be using the pencil to measure a few things. And the first thing I'm going to concentrate on when I'm drawing this light bulb is this shape right here in the middle, which of course is a circle. Now, to prove that it is a circle, what we can do, or close to a circle, is we can take the pencil and we can just measure using the pencil. So I can lay the pencil right across the middle and put my finger right over the bottom edge there, and I know from tip to here that is the height of that light bulb. And keeping my finger in place, I can go over here to the side and see how close that is to being a perfect circle. You can see it's off just a little bit, so that means it's actually a little bit taller than it is wide. So first of all, I'm just going to kind of go right above the center portion of the light bulb, or what I think is the center portion of the light bulb. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to use the pencil, and I'm just going to measure there from the end over to where I've got it marked. Yeah. So I got an approximate idea of where the center portion of the light bulb should be. Now I can compare that if I want. There's nothing wrong with doing this kind of stuff. Okay, so we're going to measure it down from that center portion, and I'm just going to take my finger and keep that in place. And just get an approximate idea. And now I'm actually just trying to keep my eye in the same place as I move the line. All right, so let's go ahead and get the height of the light bulb. Of course, another more time-consuming way that you could do this is drawing a grid or a modified grid. There are lines there. Now we can use these points to start drawing out our circular shape. Now, end. Right here, this is the endpoint that we found. I should point out right there. Okay, so we need to go up a little bit higher, and just going to kind of eyeball this. And then we need to go a little bit lower. With what I'm seeing and what's happening in the photo. So, or what's happening in the photo when I put it on the paper. In other words, I'm looking at this dark value that comes out and kind of breaks down right here. And I'm looking at the shape that happens right here as well. So this is what I'm concentrating on. And I'm trying to copy that right here in this portion of the drawing. So let me just slowly build things up. Every time we look at the subject, you may notice even more, another level of value contrast that you didn't notice before. All right, we're not done with the H pencil in this area, not by a long shot, but I am going to switch over to the HB pencil here in just a moment so we can. Yeah, I'm just making some of the values a little bit darker here. And I'm being very careful with my mark, going back and forth, changing directions. We can start to get a little bit darker with a bit more confidence now. And I'm just going to start smoothing some of these transitions. Now, I mentioned that the background is actually, right now it's white, but in our reference, you can see that it is a different it's not white, it's a gray. You can see how it contrasts with the border. So we're going to add that. We're actually going to add add a gray background, so it makes the contrast between the values a little bit more natural looking. To hear what it sounds like here. All right, so I've got this real tiny little blending stump, and I'm just going to blend a little bit on the inside here, and then we'll be ready to move on to the bigger area. So again, this is just the first part. Of this little piece that comes up. We know the second part comes back here and up, and then slightly bows out a little bit. Line right here. There are a couple of darker shapes that happen back here. So I'm going to go ahead and include an idea of where those darker shapes are. And of course I drew that line first, so I've got that as a guideline to help me figure out where they are. And I can compare with where they line up with the metal pieces that are going in. If you start wondering, hey, is the value I'm making dark enough? Or is the value I'm making right? Always look for the lights. Always look for the strong lights or whites. And that's a good point to compare. So you see how white that is? Compare it to the value that's right there. And then you can see, oh my gosh, that's quite a bit darker than what it is right there. Highlights in here. So the way I'm going to figure out where this is I'm basically just going to look at the angle that's happening right here, and I'm just going to go straight up from there. Not necessarily straight up, but I'm going to continue that diagonal out. So if I continue that diagonal out, if I can speak, I'll go about right there, and there's a slight curve. Okay, so this is a very light application, but I'm still trying to think about the cross contours of the bulb, even though most of this is going to be blended in. Now it gets slightly darker around the edge here. It really is amazing when you have that moment where something clicks and it's almost like you've discovered something. It really is like you've discovered something. And this exercise here that we're doing with the light bulb is one of those moments. If you've never done a subject like this and you go through the process and really pay attention to the changes in value, and you really pay attention to what you're seeing, you have, I'm going to say this even though it's going to sound like it was planned and it's cheesy, but you really have a light bulb moment. Because you're forced to look at the value changes. You're forced to really pay close attention. And that is, of course, if you work slowly and make yourself go through this here. And I'm still holding the pencil. This is still the H pencil. And I'm still holding it pretty far down on the shaft of the pencil. Because if you can draw one thing, or paint one thing, you can draw anything. If you can draw one thing well, then you can draw and paint anything, if that makes sense. Because the process is the same, even though we are trying to create a drawing that's fairly representational. We aren't a copy machine, and we still want our drawing to appear as a drawing. Darker. Do you see how much darker that value is getting by using the blending stump? Now I'm putting a pretty good amount of pressure here on the blending stump, and I'm kind of trying to make small circles for the most part, still kind of following the cross contours of the form of the light bulb. Now when you do see areas where you need to make the value a little bit darker with the H pencil, you can address that. You can see right here this area. I could bring that value in just a little bit further, and that's what I'm going to do. All right, so as I'm continuing to add these slightly darker values, I'm also noticing new opportunities to add some darker values in here as well. So I'm seeing more things, and that's what's going to happen the more you look at the object or the subject that you're drawing, the more things you're going to see to the end of the light bulb. And then I'm going to come out and I'm going to try to find the point in between where it kind of makes sense for where the edge would be. And I'm just going to make a little mark where that's going to be. The next thing I'm going to look at is how far up above this portion of the light the text goes on the front side. And I'm just going to, again, make a little bit of an eyeball comparison. And then put the letters inside. Okay, and then working our way back down to the bottom, we'll get these letters in the middle in a minute. I'm going to start with the lower letters, and I'm actually going to start with the O this time, since it's right in the middle. And the value changes a little bit in the reference, so for each one of the letters. So we can allow the value to change in the letters that we add here too. So I'm not just saying, okay, well, I've got a guide in place. I'll just draw over the letters that are there. Of course, I'm considering what I've got down on the surface heavily, but I'm also looking at the reference, and it's almost like I'm redrawing it again. All right, so I'm going to continue the edge of the shadow up here, and it looks like it curves slightly before touching the edge right here. Of course, it's creating a little bit of a shadow, but it's only creating a shadow where the glass gets a little bit thicker because of the curvature of the glass. And that's that slightly darker shadow that we see right here on the edge. Okay, we have a little bit of a darker value that comes out right about here. So I'm going to go ahead and put an indication of where that is, just so I can make comparisons on how far I need to pull in this shadow as we go in. Make this value a little bit lighter right here by doing so. Value right here, super dark shape. You can see it a little bit clearer in the drawing. And that shadow seems to carry down almost at a diagonal with the darker values that happen right here. So I'm going to try to make sure that that carries down in my drawing. So I'm just going to kind of make a note of where that's going to start happening. So again, at the top, I'm doing the same thing. Just looking at the shapes of value that happen up there. And just pulling those shapes up. And I'm still using a relatively light touch, or what I think is a light touch here with the H pencil. All right, one thing I want to point out here before we start making the values darker. If you see how bright this area is, or how light it is in value, if you didn't see that and you just looked at the bottom part, we're just working down here, you might say, oh, that is super light down here. I need to avoid making this area darker or adding any graphite right there because it's super light. But when we compare it to the value that happens up here, we realize that, man, this is really kind of a middle gray. And this is white, or very close to white. So in order to create the contrast that we need, we've got to make these values down here darker. We've got to add some value here, and in turn, push these values a lot darker to create the contrast. And you might have noticed that I'm pulling the pencil and now pulling the blending stop. I was pulling the pencil, and now I am pulling the blending stop following the cross contours of the form. But I'm going to try to push things as dark as I can here with the HB pencil, if possible. So again, just adding slightly darker values as I see them. And let's go right underneath here, make that a little bit darker. Make some very careful strokes on here to try to pull some of the graphite into the tooth. Maybe around the side just a little bit. Just a slight bit. And yeah, I like that. I like the way that's working. You know, you have to just look at it in context with what you've already drawn to, because when we get all zoomed in an area or all focused in on an area, it's hard to overlook what we've actually got in context with everything else on the surface right here. And I'm doing this with the H pencil, and I'm making small circles for this. This needs to be very gradual. There's a highlight on the edge of the light bulb, and I don't want to lose that. And I think I'm ready to call this one finished.
If you're ready to learn more about drawing and painting, why not check out our comprehensive membership program, which includes video courses, weekly live lessons, ebooks, lesson plans, and much, much more. Just click on the button in the center of your screen to learn more, or click on the card in the upper right-hand corner.